come to order. We're convened as of 11:15 a.m. I respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to mute yourself unless you're recognized to speak. Please note that the committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meetings, will be posted as soon as practical on the board's website. During today's meeting, we're providing communication access real-time translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated into Spanish for anyone who would like access to live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. A live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. All right, I'll now call the roll. First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Present.
Second Vice Chair Whitmore. I see an attempt.
He's here.
He's here.
I can say I can see him. He's got to be present.
Second Vice Chair Whitmore is here. Secretary Nicholson.
Present.
Treasurer Banker.
I'm here.
All right, now I'm here. And for the record, so all five of us are here. For the record, I see Director Chandler has joined us, and Director Larson, Director Guzman, and I believe that is it. So thank you all for joining. I'd like to open public comment to anyone who'd like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your hand, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you'd like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at rt.directors@rtd-denver.com. If there are hands raised right now, just as a reminder, please bear in mind staff will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you're dialed in, press *6 to toggle your mute settings. Please bear in mind that by participating in this process, you're being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, then your comments will need to be submitted via writing. Comments can be submitted to the board office at the following email address, rtd.directors@rtd-denver.com. Speakers should begin their remarks by stating their names, and each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Mr. Kroll, do we have any speakers today?
Yes, at this time I see 2 hands raised. The first hand is from Jamie Lewis.
Former Director Lewis, you're recognized.
Morning. I'd like to address the subject matter that's on your agenda today concerning the renaming of Civic Center Park. Jack Kroll and his staff has done a great job in summarizing all the work that has been done for the last 2.5 years. But to summarize quickly for those board members who may not have been able to read the packet, about 2.5 years ago, Joe Beaver, a senior advocate in the state of Colorado, requested that the Civic Center station be renamed to include the name Wade Blank. Unfortunately, at that time, the board did not have a naming process. So in late 2023, 2024, thanks to Jack and his staff, with the help of Director Rusha and former Director Sloan, they came up with the processes in order to rename properties for RTD. So a disability work group was put together by myself in 2024 that consisted of Earl Lee, Barry Rosenberg, Joe Beaver, Dawn Russell, Brian Grew, and Marissa Caruso. At that time, at the beginning of this year, 2025, because of the work of that group initiating the application to change the Civic Center to Wade Blank, Jack formed a committee. I think it's a committee of 8. Before that, our committee collected over 30 endorsements, including the proclamation from the city of Denver and the General Assembly of our state in 2023. The working group did meet with the committee to share information a few weeks ago, and I know that committee also had a chance to visit the museum at the Atlantis Incorporated, which is an independent living center that has a plethora of history concerning Wade Blank. And I think what they learned most is that Wade Blank was more than just a gang of 19. He was a civil rights leader who marched with Martin Luther King. He also established independent living here in Colorado. We are one of the leaders in ensuring people with disabilities are not relegated to a nursing home, but that they can live independently in the community. And he also gave us a platform, people with disabilities, a platform to speak for themselves, whether that was at the legislature level or at the federal level. So I just want to commend the work that staff has done and hope you approve this for the main meeting, your next full board meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, former Director Lewis, for your comments. Our next speaker, Mr. Kroll.
Yes, next we have Earl Lee.
Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Joe Boucher. My name is Earl Lee. I am the outgoing chair of the ACPD committee, and I was honored with a seat on the renaming committee as well. When Wade Blank came to Denver in 1971, Denver's ugly laws, which prohibited people with visible disabilities from appearing in public, were still in effect. RTD had been established but would not start bus service until 1974, and handicapped people were institutionalized as if they were inflicted with the disease. Wade Blank came to Denver to work at Heritage House, a nursing home, one of the institutions that housed handicapped. During this time, Wade became concerned about how institutionalized living was negatively affecting people with disabilities. Along with a friend, Barry Rosenberg, he began outings with the Heritage House patients using Rosenberg's VW van. They went to Red Rocks, to parks, to other public spaces now that ugly laws had been repealed. That was not enough for Wade Blank, though. He wanted a community designed for people with disabilities to live independently. In 1975, he co-founded the Atlantis Community, only the second such organization in the country at that time. Atlantis provides housing and services to people with disabilities so that they can live independently. Independent living, however, means nothing if you can't travel anywhere. Blank spoke with RTD about adding lifts to their buses to accommodate wheelchairs with some limited success. So the Gang of 19 was formed under his direction in 1978. Using their wheelchairs, they surrounded 2 buses at Colfax and Broadway for 2 days. The negotiations restarted. RTD agreed to make all new buses wheelchair accessible, making them one of the first in the nation. So the area of Colfax and Broadway is a place in history. Civic Center Station becomes the basis of that, and we hope that you agree to add the honorarium of Wade Blank to Civic Center Station. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Kroll, any other speakers?
At this time, there are no further hands raised.
Were there any emails sent?
Specific to contents on this agenda, no.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kroll. With no further public comments, I will close this section for public participation. Okay, moving on, there are 2 recommended actions on today's agenda. The first action under consideration is for the committee, is the state lobbying services contract. This is for the board of directors to authorize general manager and CEO to enter into a contract for state lobbying services with Brandon Barry McKenna, Public Affairs, or BBMK, for a contract term of 3 years with 2 option years. The total not to exceed contract cost over 5 years will be $690,000. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Whitmore.
Second, O'Keefe.
Got Whitmore as the mover and O'Keefe as the second. Mr. Davies, our government relations officer, would you like to present this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Michael Davies, Government Relations Officer. This recommended action is following the April 29th, 2025 action by the Board of Directors to approve a summary scope of work for solicitation for state lobbying services. On May 5th, a competitive solicitation was published. An evaluation panel did conclude after the competitive solicitation period was closed, and the panel does recommend awarding a contract to Brandeberry McKenna Public Affairs. That's all I have in terms of remarks, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Davies. Do we have any questions or comments? Secretary Nicholson.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Davies, can you speak a little bit to the process of solicitation, competitive solicitation here? How many bids or applicant, I forget, I don't know the term here, did we receive for this that the committee ultimately considered before selecting to go with our current wonderful providers, Brandeberry McKenna?
Mr. Davies.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Only one bid was submitted.
Secretary.
What kind like in terms of outreach on a bid like this, obviously you publish it on the I assume OpenGov website, but what kind of outreach did you do to the other lobbying firms in the Capitol to make them aware of the fact that this was an available opportunity?
Mr. Davies or Ms. Johnson?
Yes, if I may, I'll take that question. Thank you very much, Chair Bouquet, and greetings all. Deborah Johnson, General Manager and Chief Executive Officer. So recognizing that we ensure that we have open and fair competition as relates to solicitations, we work with our contracting and procurement office. There's a myriad of ways in which we publicize different solicitations. Quite naturally, there are registered vendors that basically sign up to ensure that they're apprised of notifications. They do that in adherence with the NAICS codes, NAIC representing the North American Industry Contracting Services, I believe. And it basically has line items for the different types of solicitations that are readily available. We also publish solicitations available in trade industries. They could be more or less specific on the NAICS code in which it's aligned with. And I think what's important to mention here, and I'm going to overstep just somewhat, that quite naturally, when you're looking at a professional services contract in relationship to where we sit, recognizing that there was one bidder, generally speaking, most individuals within that NAICS code have an understanding who's providing that service. And so that's also oftentimes a factor in not getting other solicitations, because simply put, people know that this contractor customarily is bidding. And so that is the nature of the beast, but I want to ensure that we adhere to procurement practices, and we do leverage the opportunity, since we're in a public setting now talking about solicitation, and we did bring the summary scope of work forward to this body and then double back with you, which we're doing now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Secretary.
I appreciate it. It's helpful for me to understand how all of this works, and thank you for the detailed explanation, both of you.
First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add that as one of the board's representatives for kind of day-to-day government affairs contact, I got the pleasure of dealing with the firm over the past 5 months, and it was definitely a difficult session. The state was dealing with budget issues. There are, of course, several things that were of interest to RTD, and I was very impressed in my first year dealing with them and their ability to adapt and provide good counsel and help us through some challenging issues.
Thank you, Director. Any further comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm having a hard time with my raise hand function, but I have figured out mute. So I just wanted to mention that, I've had 6 years of experience with this firm, and even a couple of years prior to that as a different client. And they're just outstanding, one of the best in the Capitol. And their institutional knowledge of RTD is far and away better than anybody that could bid on the job. And I've just been very impressed with all associates at the firm. So I strongly recommend a yes vote to continue this relationship. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll take the vote. Are there any no votes on this item? Okay, seeing none, the item will pass 5-0. All right, moving on, folks. We're going to go to our next action item, and that is for the appointment of Chair Bouquet to Senate Bill 25-161 Accountability Committee. For the Board of Directors to appoint Chair Bouquet to represent the Board of Directors as a non-voting member on the Accountability Committee established by Senate Bill 25-161. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so I have O'Keefe as the mover, and I have Nicholson as the second. Before I open this up to the further discussion to the committee, I do want to take a moment to give two main reasons of why I believe I'll be the appropriate candidate for this position. So first off, the position of the chair of the board is best positioned to kind of share perspectives of what I've seen as a chair compared to what I've seen as 4 years as a director. Being a chair, I think, really opens your eyes in regards to the overall governance of this board. And then second, though, this is a recommendation that keeps with our practices of having the chair recommend appointments and select external committees. I did want to bring this forward to the EC and then ultimately the board to get any feedback that you wanted in regards to this. And with that, I'll open it up to further discussion. And I see First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
I really support your participation. I think it's really important for the chair to be represented on this. We do have a number of other bites at the apple with former directors and, of course, the governor's appointee. And my only request in this whole thing is during the process, you must refer to yourself in the third person.
Okay, sounds good. Appreciate the request. Secretary Nicholson.
Yeah, so my only question here is, you already have a pretty big job in being the chair, and you also have a pretty big job in being a school teacher in the fall, and you also have, a personal life occasionally. Do you feel pretty comfortable about your ability to take on this additional responsibility and and really dig into it? Because obviously this is really important for us.
Great question. And to the latter, I'm not sure if I do have a personal life anymore. My full-time career is just a public servant. I do believe so. If it does get to a situation where, I feel that this would be too much to take on, one is going to be my, second largest priority after being the board chair of serving on this committee. But if it does, got some backup plans. So thank you. Director Chandler.
Yes, and with that same vein, I would ask, is there an opportunity to appoint someone to be just in case you're sick, or what is the appointment process for that? Because obviously, there could be a time when you just absolutely can't make it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if I can answer that question at this time. I'm not sure, Troy. I know you, or Director Whitmore. I know you served on the accountability before. Did you and Lynn ever have a process in regard to that?
I don't recall that we did, but we were not voting members. We were largely observers with an opportunity along with Ms. Johnson to opine from time to time. So yeah, I don't recall a backup then, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. Ms. Johnson?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add, considering that these are open and public meetings, anyone can attend. So recognizing that the chair is a non-voting member, there could be others that are privy to the discussions. More or less, there were questions that were fielded from the participants as well. And I believe in this instance, if any board member opted to attend, I'm certain that the accountability committee will allow you to put forward comment in the absence of the chair or even when the chair is present. So I just wanted to state that for the record, as I'm not a member of the board, but however, recognizing the scope of the accountability committee during its last cycle, I was able to offer valuable input relative to some key elements that the members maybe weren't aware of relative to certain aspects in relationship to transit operations and things of the like. So I'm certain you'll have that opportunity as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Yeah, and on that note, I do want to mention Mr. Kroll. I will have him as a staffing member as well. My hope is he can attend these accountability committees as well. And as mentioned, it is open to the public. So at any point we feel, I get very sick or I'll be gone, that I'll have a replacement take that position. So, and anyone can attend it since it is a public meeting. Director Banker, Treasurer Banker.
Well, first of all, thank you for being willing to do this, because I think it's going to be an intense job, but interesting. So my question, though, is with regard to Senate Bill 161. There are so many items listed in Senate Bill 161. I was sort of going back and forth here with Jack, just making sure that somebody at RTD is keeping track of every single item that the legislature is now requiring us to do, whether it's a report or a particular process. It seems like there's so many, I've lost count when I've gone back and tried reading it. So so long as we are keeping track of every item in 161 and we can go back to the state legislature and report. That's my only comment.
Perfect. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Treasurer Banker, for your comments. I want to assure everybody that's assembled and those that are listening in that we quite naturally are keeping track, recognizing we have an obligation to be good fiduciaries. There are certain things that are in statute to which we must adhere. The team and I have already met. We have a process in place, and rest assured that we will be presenting before TLRC and other bodies as requested, and we will be very well suited to do such. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the other thing I would like to note as well before we take it to a vote, I will be giving major updates in regards to the accountability committee through my weekly updates. So do keep an eye out for those as the process goes forward. I think it'll be very important because it's kind of a quick time frame that we're looking at in regards to this accountability committee. So keep an eye out for the weekly updates. I'll make sure for those who can't attend the public meetings, everyone knows what's going on. So, okay, let's put it to a vote if I don't see any further discussion. Are there any no votes on this? Okay, seeing none, the item will pass 5-0. I'm honored. Thank you. All right, moving on. Those are our two recommended actions. We're going to move on to the June board meeting agenda. So before we move on to that review, I would like to note that the board will have a special board meeting the same day as our regular board meeting, and that's going to begin at 3 p.m. The anticipated agenda items for the meeting include approval of the Joint Rail Service IGA and another action item relating to an existing contract. So moving on, is there a motion to approve the regular monthly board meeting agenda for meeting on Tuesday, June 24th?
So moved.
Got O'Keefe?
Second, Whitmore.
I got Whitmore as a second. Any discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll take the vote. Any no votes on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll pass 5-0. Okay, there are two items of discussion on today's agenda, and the first is the monthly government relations report of June 2025. Government Relations Officer, Mr. Davies, would you please present this item?
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Michael Davies, Government Relations Officer. Have a brief government relations report where I'll touch on federal, state, and local issues. Starting at the federal level, really the focus is on the reconciliation process. And again, reconciliation is really related to revenues that fund our federal government and really only requires a 50+1 majority to pass both House and Senate. The reconciliation bill did pass the House and is being debated in the Senate at this point. The Senate Finance Committee on Monday did release their version of the reconciliation bill. There are differences between that and the House passed version. Notably, and as I reported in a previous government relations report, in the House version, there were some changes to revenues that would have supported the Highway Trust Fund. And of course, that's important because the Highway Trust Fund is a major contributor to funding a surface transportation bill. The Senate Finance Committee released version does not have those fees that were there. So just noting that difference there. And as I said, because there are differences, we will see where the process goes in the Senate. But there will likely be differences if the Senate is able to pass their bill. So there was originally a July 4th kind of goal between both House and Senate to send this bill to the president. That's going to be a very tough goal to make, and I think it's probably realistic that this issue will be debated further into the July timeframe. And I know, both House and Senate will really be pushing to come to a conclusion before a planned August recess for Congress. Second, the president's budget. There were further details. As you all may recall, there was a skinny budget released. A second, more detailed version of the president's recommended budget to Congress was released that detailed a little more of the Department of Transportation's recommended funding levels. I think good news is that transit funding did receive an increase in the president's recommended budget, a 1.5% increase for public transit funding. So that's good news. I will just note with regards to the appropriation process, which is normally where Congress would be focused on at this time, really a lot of the oxygen in the room is being taken up by the reconciliation process. So there are delays in terms of the overall timeline to appropriations, but some of the House subcommittees on appropriations are starting to do their work. I believe we anticipate really a mid-July timeframe when the House Transportation Appropriations Subcommittee that oversees DOT funding is expected to do their work in the House. So that'll be one of the first bills that we see with regards to the appropriations process out of Congress. Moving on to state issues. Since my last report on June 2nd, Governor Polis did sign House Bill 25-1290. That's the Transit Worker Assault and Funding Bill. In other issues, I have been tracking the Accountability Committee process, which is really being run and stood up by the Colorado Energy Office. There are no details that I have to report to the board at this point. I have been in touch with Energy Office staff and will keep in communication with them and try to provide as much detail as I can in terms of schedule and logistics and planning to the RTD board. Lastly, the Transportation Legislation Review Committee, or TLRC, does hold interim meetings during the summer. Those meetings traditionally have started more in the July timeframe. This year, they appear to be pushed back. This week, they did set their agenda for 3 meetings starting in late August and early September and then into October. We'll work closely with the TLRC staff to get a time for RTD to schedule and make sure that we adhere to statutory requirements to report before the TLRC. And to Director Banker's point, that'll be an opportunity to really report on some of those items associated with 161 and other bills in the past. Moving on to the local level, on May 4th, General Manager Johnson, as well as Chief of Police Martin Gano, did have an opportunity to present and meet with the Metro Mayor's Caucus. And those are always great opportunities to update all of the mayors that participate in the Mayor's Caucus. And it was a good discussion, largely touching on personal security data and reports for them, and took a lot of questions and discussion there. That is all I have for my government relations report, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. Any questions? Yeah, Secretary Nicholson.
Yeah, so Mr. Davies, obviously we're coming up on the appointment period. I've had some constituents and their kids express interest in the youth appointment to that, and whether that's going to be an open process or how that's going to look. Is that something where at this point they should just reach out to the senator who's making the appointment, or are we going to get more information? Like, this seems like something where we may be heading toward, not having an open process. just because this has to start relatively soon. We're talking about, I think, August 1st is when the first meetings are going to be. So, from your perspective, if you're not hearing anything so far on what that process is going to look like, what would your recommendation be to my constituents who are interested in serving in some of these roles?
Mr. Davies?
Yeah, thank you, Director Nicholson. Great question. And to your point, there is no details that I have been told in my communications with the Energy Office. Again, this is really being run and stood up by the Colorado Energy Office. There hasn't been any details passed on to me in terms of how that process happens for all of the other individuals that have a responsibility to appoint people to that committee. Again, you did mention August 1st. That is the deadline. And in terms of a recommendation, I think you're correct. Reaching out to the senators or elected officials, House members included as well, that are responsible for appointing. If there are individuals that you speak to, I would recommend that they just reach out to the most logical individual listed in the bill that would meet the appointment that they're seeking. But there is nothing that has been asked of RTD as a part of that process.
Secretary?
Got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Davies. Any other comments or questions from Mr. Davies? Perfect. Well, thank you, sir, for your presentation. Greatly appreciated. All right, moving on. Our second item is for the Honorary Property Name Proposal Review Committee recommendation of Civic Center Station. And Mr. Kroll, would you please present on this to the committee?
Absolutely. Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office. I'm here to present on the work of the Honorary Property Name Proposal Review Committee, which looked at a proposal that the Board Office received with respect to Civic Center Station. Just to ground everybody, we'll go over quickly what the current board policy is on these proposals. We'll talk about the actual proposal that was received. Then I'll share some insights into how the review committee conducted its work and share ultimately the review committee's recommendation. And then we will have a quick conversation about timeline and next steps. And then we are looking for some sort of consensus direction from the executive committee at this juncture for the board's policy on the matter. So speaking of the policy, this was something that, as former Director Lewis alluded to, the board did not have in place in late 2023 when you all received a letter signed by several dozen members of the General Assembly encouraging you all to pursue an honorary name for Civic Center Station, recognizing the contributions of Wade Blank. And prior to that letter, all station naming actions were done by the board. But these were done in a sense of how do we orient people to the system. They were never done with the perspective of having an honorary name on the property. So there was an existing property and station naming policy that we reviewed as a group, and it was determined that it would make sense to pursue an additional policy that outlined the steps that the community could take to add an honorary name. It was adopted back in July of 2024 after a great deal of work by Government Relations Officer Michael Davies, Directors Rusha and former Director Marjorie Sloan, and myself, and the board provided input along the way to craft that. And this policy applies to stations, park and rides, facilities, and really any RTD owned property. And it's not intended, I want to be very clear about this, the policy is not intended to displace a primary station name. In developing the policy, we looked across the ACTA landscape and saw that not a lot of other transit agencies, regional transit agencies that is, have stations with honorary names. And those that do remain very loyal to the primary station name remaining a wayfinding name. At the end of the day, you all, sit on top of a transit agency that helps people get from A to B. So it's important to have a policy that recognizes the primacy of navigating and orienting the customer to their surroundings. The proposal submission process is pretty straightforward. Once you all approve the policy back in July of 2024, the board office stood up an application of interest on our website. We don't have the systems to take all of the documents that the community needs to submit at one time. So we opened up an application of interest that I check regularly, whereby community members can go onto the board's website and submit, hey, this is the station I'm thinking about, this is the individual I'm thinking about. And then I follow up with them directly to make sure that they understand the process from that point on. Primarily, the process is comprised of 3 components that the community must submit: biography or historical background of the proposed honoree, letters of support from community members, kind of showing that breadth and depth of community support, and a proclamation or resolution from local, county, or city government supporting the honorary name. And I think this last piece is key here. You all, in developing station names for the various lines that the agency built out over the last 20 years, had a commitment to partnering with local municipalities on what those names would be. And this is in line with that. The last thing you all would want to do from a governance perspective is rename a property or station without the support of the local community. And having a proclamation or resolution from the local city council is obviously a great proxy to appreciate whether that community supports the proposal or not. Then within the proposal, the review committee is specifically looked, and the board ultimately is specifically looking for certain criteria. And those are namely documented contributions to transit locally, documented contributions to public transit nationally, or documented direct connection with a significant event occurring within the vicinity of the property or station that the community is seeking to add an honorary name to. One thing that's important to note here is that it's not intended to conflict with any kind of corporate sponsorship that may end up or not on a given station. So that is a policy that you all also have too. The one time it was notably used was for the University of Colorado A line. Since then, there haven't been any necessarily notable corporate sponsorships of any stations or lines within the district, but the policy is intended to separate honorary names from corporate sponsors, and any station that has a corporate sponsorship is not eligible for an honorary name and vice versa. And then it cannot be a former RTD director, and the person must be deceased for a minimum of 10 years to be eligible. So then part of the process too, and I'm not going to run through this review rubric in full here, but you can see that the board established a review rubric to keep consistent review of these proposals over time. 3 criteria that is evaluated on is the historical significance, the breadth and depth of community support, and the alignment with RTD's values. And you can see the scoring system here, which we'll make note of later when we talk about how the committee scored this proposal. The proposal itself that you all received was for Civic Center Station to honor the life and career and contributions, many contributions of Reverend Wade Blank. The proposal was submitted by Joe Beaver and Mark Simon. They actually both submitted proposals, but I worked with Director Lewis to kind of ensure that the community got behind one main proposal and put that forward. It ultimately resulted in 28 letters of recommendation, which are included in your packet, and Denver City Council unanimously approved its resolution of support at the end of April. Once the end of April came around, that's when we considered here in the board office that the application had been completed, and we began to stand up the review committee. Reverend Wade Blank, many of you might be already very familiar with his work, but this is just a brief overcap of their contributions. As Earl Lee mentioned at the beginning, Reverend Blank came to the Denver area in the early 1970s and found a passion for working with people with disabilities. And it's clear that his life and career not only gave those individuals a platform to have their voices heard, but allowed them to live a life that was much more normal than society was affording them at the time. And obviously there's a huge connection here, nationally because a lot of the work that Reverend Blank did with RTD and Denver spawned similar protest movements across the country and led to what many argue within the historical community were significant contributing factors to the passing of the ADA in 1990. And then obviously the Gang of 19 protest that was referenced earlier by Mr. Lee is directly connected to Civic Center Station, having occurred directly across the street from where the station resides today. And here is a photo of Reverend Blank and his son Lincoln. Reverend Blank unfortunately passed away trying to save Lincoln's life in a drowning accident off the coast of California. In part of a result of his untimely death, the agency actually previously dedicated Civic Center Station in his honor, and the plaque that is pictured here you can find near the ticket window in Civic Center Station if you ever go in there. The agency subsequently, after a renovation to the facility, went back and rededicated this plaque in the summer of 2023. And so the agency has acted formally in a previous time frame to recognize Reverend Blank, and this proposal I think would only further advance the previous recognition that he has been afforded. So the work of the committee, the policy that you all have clearly outlines a specific group of individuals that should be a part of the committee, not necessarily because of who they are, but because of their roles within the agency. And you can see here listed the members of the committee and their various roles. One person I want to highlight here are really the three people at the bottom of this list. Assistant Professor Rachel Gross, who is the co-director of the Public History Program. When the board put together its policy, it was adamant that there be someone from the history community or historical community as part of this committee. And public history is the practice of studying the history in our public spaces. So you have the academic history that's presented in your textbooks and in your schools, but there is a great amount of public history that exists all around us all the time. And it's now Associate Professor Gross is the co-director of that program at CU Denver, and so it was a great addition to the committee's work. And then to provide additional community input, the committee also includes members from the ACPD and the CAC to ensure that this is not just an internal RTD process, that there's a lot of community input into reviewing the proposal as well. And the group really was just asked to review the materials that were submitted, judge them against the rubric that the board had passed and the policy that the board had set into place. We did take a tour of the Atlantis Community Incorporated offices, which as this process unfolds, if any directors are interested in learning more, I think that's a great place to start, and I would be happy to coordinate another tour specific for directors with that space, because it's a really important part of the history of RTD and the history of the region. Ultimately, the committee made the recommendation unanimously to encourage the executive committee to move forward with adopting an honorary name for Civic Center Station. You can see the scoring here. Harkening back to the rubric, the top score any evaluative criteria could receive was 7. And you can see the average score on most of these was right around 6. And then you can see that 23 of the 24 scored evaluations rated the proposal that we received as exceeding expectations. Only one category was rated as meets expectations. So obviously the review committee that was established by the policy has a very favorable view of this proposal, and it met a lot of the criteria that the board has set forward. And in fact, it met all of the criteria that the board has set forward and frequently exceeded it. The recommendation from the group is to move forward with the name of Wade Blake Civic Center Station. Part of the committee's makeup, you can see here, comprises an individual, Stephen Breyer, from our RTD communications and engagement staff. That individual being on the committee allowed the committee to put forward a name that, I think is well grounded in allowing RTD to put forward something that's accessible, understandable, and has a good community feel to it. It also matches what the Denver City Council had approved in its recommendation in April. And so the next steps, obviously, the meeting today is the June 18th one here. in the middle of the screens, the fourth from the left, and we're presenting this as a discussion item. If there is consensus from you all as an executive committee, we would then return to you all in July with a recommended action that contained two pieces of information that we don't have available at this time. One would be the cost estimates to updating the signage at the station as well as across the system and various different digital assets, and the timeline associated with doing so. And once all of that information was in hand, if the executive committee wanted to recommend the action to the full board, it could. At such time as this item reaches the full board, I want to be clear that it would require a 2/3 majority vote to be approved. And with that, Chair Bouquet, that concludes my presentation. And I would encourage you all to have a discussion now around how you feel about this proposal and give some direction to staff. I'm also happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kroll. I will take chair's privilege right now and just say I was able to attend one of the committee meetings a few weeks back, and it was excellent to hear everyone's stories, and I greatly appreciate the work that this committee has done. Exciting stuff on my end. Second, Vice Chair Whitmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly echo your comments about the committee's work and Mr. Kroll's work. This is something that's been needing to be done for quite some time, and now we have a great policy to utilize in the future. And this is really a no-brainer. I'm in full support of moving this item to the full board, and can't wait to celebrate the activity because I'm sure it will be a very positive vote. And with that, due to rescheduling a meeting, I will be departing this meeting. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon.
All right. We'll see you later, Second Vice Chair Whitmore. All right. We have 4 executive members present now. Secretary Nicholson.
Thank you. So I've been following this process since before I was on the board, and obviously, having taken over from former Director Lewis, and as someone who has many friends in the disability community, is something that I cared about a lot. I think we should absolutely rename the facility for Reverend Blank. I don't feel as comfortable renaming the station. And what do I mean by that? In the same way that we have, Empower Field at Civic Center Station, most transit agencies around the country, having spent a good amount of time, researching this and reading about it, rename plazas, they rename halls. They don't rename the stations themselves because of the wayfinding concerns, because of the impact to customers in being able to understand where they're trying to go. And so, again, happy to rename, Wade Blank Hall at Civic Center Station, put up pictures, rename the front of the thing. But I just think there's not much precedent nationwide for actually renaming the station itself. And we should be thoughtful before we go ahead and start doing that, or we're going to get to a point where it's, Nabisco Station at, or whatever. Like I feel really uncomfortable going down this road without a really clear understanding of the fact that this is not something most other transit agencies do.
Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to respond. That was absolutely a concern of the board and of staff as we endeavored to develop the policy in 2024. And that is why it's very clear in the policy that while the honorary name should be displayed prominently and used across the system, the primary name will remain the wayfinding name. And the committee actually discussed when we were looking at what name to put forward as our recommendation, the committee actually discussed the irony of someone with a disability being disoriented because they didn't know who Wade Blank was and they were going to Wade Blank Station. And therefore, it's very important as this gets unfurled and rolled out that there's a nice balance struck between the wayfinding element and the celebration of Mr. Blank, or excuse me, Reverend Blank's life and career and many contributions to transit.
Yeah, Director Nicholson.
So I guess, yeah, what I would say in that case is I need to know exactly what that will look like in practice from staff. Where will we be, what will it look like on the maps? What will it look like on the website? What will it look like? Give me an actual understanding of what the impact of this will be. And if I can appreciate that it's not going to it's not going to be confusing to people, then I'm open to it. But I'm going to need to see that next month from you guys before I could be comfortable moving forward with this.
Thank you. First Vice Chair O'Keefe. Oh, did we lose him?
Sorry, nope, I'm here.
Perfect.
I wanted to thank former Director Lewis for sharing the history and context with me in a couple of meetings. I understand the concerns about blending together stations and locations. We actually, when I was the project manager for the original construction at National Western, there was a huge push to have the National Western Center name incorporated in there. And there was concern, I think, from RTD at the time. I never heard it directly. It was just conveyed that that people would be confused about where, National Western Center was. And I think, this is just an effort in wayfinding, and I'm willing to trust that staff are able to pull this together. And maps are just maps. What's the stat? 40% of all Americans can't find the US on a map. And so, it's all, we need to help with almost any name we give. So I appreciate this going forward, and I really appreciate the really rigorous process for future naming, so people understand, this is not something that we're going to just name, rename. And I do like that it has a fairly robust approval process. So thank you, Mr. Kroll.
Thank you, Director O'Keefe. Yeah, just on a note on that, I will say there was a lot of board discussion in regards to that last year and making sure, we have a point system going forward with it. So, Treasurer Banker.
Thank you. I moved to Colorado in the early 1980s, and I heard much about Wade Blank. And having served on the board in the 90s and learning more about him, I would be in full support of this measure. He almost single-handedly changed RTD and how we serve members of the disability community. And so naming this after him, however our staff or however the proposal is coming forward, I would be in full support.
Thank you, Treasurer. Mr. Kroll, does this help give direction for you?
I think we have the consensus. I believe we have Director Nicholson's direction to provide specific information, and I can coordinate with staff on that element. In closing, I just want to say a big thank you to all of the members of the review committee, and just quickly mention them by name. John McKay, who is the executive business partner and now chief of staff to the CEO. Gabe Christie, our manager in ADA, Eric Wright, Deputy Assistant GM Rail Operations, Stephen Breyer, Senior Manager of Marketing, Associate Professor Gross, as I mentioned earlier, from the University of Colorado, Denver, Earl Lee, our outgoing ACPD chair, and Caitlin Fortner, who is a member of the CAC. They all did phenomenal work, and they gave time out of their busy schedules to this effort, and we couldn't have been successful without their efforts and input and true engagement in this process.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. And again, this board thanks this committee for all their work. And it was really cool to see, the discussion that was happening last time. I was able to attend. So thank you all for your work, and looking forward to this next exciting step. So. All right, moving on. That was our last discussion item. So that'll move us into other matters. Are there any other matters? Secretary.
Thank you. Excuse me. I circulated a letter earlier this week to our fellow members of the board about some of the disruptions that we've had over the last few weeks at the protests, at the Nuggets game, at the Coldplay concert, where individuals, constituents, and riders from around the metro area have had their journeys significantly disrupted by our challenges in delivering service as they expected it. We've discussed this previously on the board at operations. We've discussed it at previous board meetings. And I think especially with what happened over the weekend with individuals being left to walk an hour in the hot sun because they couldn't get to Union Station. I've gotten more outreach about this issue than anything else since I've been on the board by like a factor of 3 or 4. I think we need to have a real discussion about how we are handling how we are handling special events. And incidences where we know that we will be dealing with a significant amount of public ridership relative to what we would normally be experiencing, and where that ridership is in a I must get to this thing or get home from this thing, whether that's a game, protest, whatever. We have not met what people have expected of us, and that may be partially us not setting expectations, and that may be partially us not meeting the expectations that we have set. But regardless of why, it is harmful actively and in a big way to our credibility with the public when we fall down in a spectacular manner over major events. And so I would encourage, as leaders of the board, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we can do moving forward to address this, but this can't be something that we just ignore. Too many people, I know, Karen, you circulated an email from one of your constituents who ran into the same thing. I don't want to see this happen again in 2 weeks and get more of these emails. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as fellow board members about what we can move forward. And obviously, if GMCO Johnson wants to weigh in on her thoughts, I appreciate it. I will say your letter this morning about the response to the protests in particular.
First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Thank you for raising this issue, Director Nicholson. You and I talked a little bit. I think a good approach for this is not to try to deal with the individual events, but to take a step back and look at our overall process to make sure the right resources are in place, the right authorities. Do we have a single point of contact? Get feedback from the major venues, Power Field, Ball Arena, Coors Field, wherever you want to go, the convention center, and get their feedback on what would work and what wouldn't work. This seems like a great topic for a subset of OSS that has that expertise. I do not. To work with a team of staff and the board, and I really hope that we make this about going forward rather than any specific event that we could plan perfectly for that and it would never happen that way again. So I would be very supportive of a subcommittee, special committee, or a group, an informal group that's board and management, and really go out and get some feedback from the venues and people. And there's we have great promoters that are based right here in Colorado, and they might have some feedback. So that would be my kind of hope of how we would go forward.
Thank you, Director. Director Banker.
Director O'Keefe, I like your suggestion of perhaps a subcommittee of one of our committees, whether it's operation or even finance. There is also a section in Senate Bill 161 where they specifically request RTD to put together a plan for large events like this. And what can we do when there are service disruptions? I do think we need to perhaps plan ahead a little bit more and put more thought or resources or whatever is needed to make sure that we really shine on these events when there's so many folks that are relying on RTD to get downtown. When there's crowds downtown, nobody wants to drive, which is a good thing. So then they do try RTD, and it's at that point that I hope that we can showcase our service and bring more new riders into the system and see this more as an opportunity to serve the public as best we can.
Thank you, Treasurer. Yeah, I'll offer some comments as well. I think ultimately, I think Director O'Keefe, I think you brought it up at one of our last committee meetings in regards to, first time rider experience in regards to the Coldplay concert. And I have to be careful, as, a policymaker of us trying to get into, exact details. I know the situations that have happened in regards to the service disruptions, I would say are fairly unique, but who knows, what the future holds in regards to, mass protest or any factors such as that. I think we need to look overall in regards to, and is it potentially, an ad hoc committee or excuse me, is it like a working group to, have that conversation with staff or have staff present that with OSS. So in regards to, we can't lose sight that how do we mitigate it for the future, I think is the biggest thing without going into the specifics of it. So I'm all on board on it. I'm not sure if staff, if you wanted to offer anything, Ms. Johnson, in regards to the issue being raised or not.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity to opine on this matter. I think one thing that we're all aligned on is that we can plan to the ultimate scenario, but recognizing that delivering transit service is dynamic. And I want to assure everyone that we do have standard operating procedures, especially as relates to special events. And I am 100% on board with what Vice Chair O'Keefe said as we look forward, because we could Monday morning quarterback the demonstrations that took place over the weekend. Quite naturally, I would just share that I believe the team did a yeoman's job, and we would do the same thing again because we have to ensure the safety of individuals, recognizing that we had people sitting in the emergency command center along with City and County of Denver personnel, DPD police, and decisions were made relative to the large throngs of pedestrians being in public rights of way. And so I would say that's neither here nor there because that's an anomaly. And I actually, in the interest of full disclosure, had one of our police commanders that sent out a commendation to me and Chief Martingano about everybody that was involved, and recognizing the information that was available to that individual being an on-site commander, basically with an alignment with shutting down DUS because of what they were seeing on the ground. And recognizing the whole aspect about the path forward, I would suggest that staff could put together some various recommendations because I want you to know that we do have COOPs, continuity of operation plans and things of the like. And we do engage with different event venues. There's an undertaking that's going on right now where we are working in tandem with Visit Denver about the myriad of activities that they have on their calendar and how might we leverage RTD in such a way so we have that information at the front end as it relates to providing means of transport to large-scale events, recognizing that we do work in tandem with the event organizers at the major event venues as well. So with that, recognizing that you all have constituents and you hear about concerns that are paramount to them, I welcome the opportunity to garner a better understanding of what that is. I just want to ensure that we could do it in such a way where we're not negating our ability to ensure that we are leveraging our COOP when necessary, that it's not impeding our operation standards relative to anybody being in and around a right of way. And so that's what I would offer up, but it is this board's ability to put forward various aspects relative to what you all think are optimal, and as relates to anything operating in reference to the subject matter expertise we have, especially with large events. I say that basically having worked in DC, and this was something that we had to engage with on a quite regular basis. I do have some insight into that as we move forward. So welcome those thoughts, and whomever you deem appropriate, Chair Bouquet, to liaise with the team and I. We welcome the opportunity quite naturally because we want to ensure that when we set out to take someone somewhere that we can ensure that they have a return trip. And I think these recent events basically may have given RTD a black eye from the service delivery vantage point, but I think it gives us a shining star as we ensure that people were safe in and around our facilities and our rights of way. Thank you.
Thank you, GMCO. Director O'Keefe.
Yeah, I think the thing for all of us to keep in mind is, to paraphrase Mike Tyson, everyone's got a strategy until they get punched in the face. And, that is, I know that's the kind of, the COOP would probably address that. But, I think looking forward, if we can make sure that all that is vetted with the current venue managers. They might be different. They change their, Empower Arena is going to be an evolving place. It won't look the same every quarter or so as they start building it out. So that's going to be a new challenge for us again. So I would love to kind of have how things work perfectly, how we staff up, how we communicate it, what shortcomings we have in technology or communication tools with people, and understanding that in the end our best laid plan is probably never going to perfectly fit.
Thank you, First Vice Chair. Secretary?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think what you said, GMCO, is really correct. That on a lot of levels, this was executed well, and it was responded to effectively, and we handled the mitigations in a manner that was organized and all of that. The problem was that in all of these cases, the expectations of the public didn't match up with what we ended up doing. And so I think for me, the way I think about this is it really is two-sided. Either we change the way we set expectations for people, or we change the way that we deliver service to match the expectations that people have. But we can't be at a point, 6 months from now, where people are getting dropped off and unexpectedly having to walk for an hour in the sun. If they know they're going to have to do it, they know they're going to have to do it. And sometimes that's what you're going to have to live with when it comes to public transit. But it's just a matter of making sure that we balance the needs and expectations of people with what we can actually deliver. And then when those sorts of disruptions happen, especially if we think there's a good chance that they will, hey, we may not be able to run a train as late as you would like us to after a concert, or we may not be able to have our 30-minute trains. We may have to drop a run if we don't have enough operators, as we did with the Coldplay concert. With the Nuggets game. I think it's really about both understanding how we communicate that effectively, but also being really clear about what we can effectively deliver. So I think we're doing a lot of things right. It's that last gap between what we are doing and what the public understands that I think is where we're really having issues. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Well, thank you for the discussion. I'm glad that was able to be brought up, and greatly appreciate all of your comments. All right, moving on. Let me see. Apologies for this. Any other matters we need to discuss at this point? Any other matters? Secretary? Oh, leftover hand. Okay. Well, with that being said, our next meeting will be, my apologies. I think we are, let me pull up my script. I believe, sorry, Mr. Kroll, what date is our next meeting? Could you remind me?
I believe it's Thursday, July 24th.
Yes, it will be Thursday, July 24th. That will be, oh,
Just a point of clarification, it's Tuesday. We're meeting on a Tuesday, not a Thursday.
The next executive committee meeting is Thursday, July 24th. Sorry.
My bad. I'm thinking board. Let me hush. Bye-bye.
But we will definitely all be back at it next Tuesday at 3 p.m.
I'm confused. I don't even know what day it is.
Apologies. Our next regular board meeting will be next Tuesday. Our next meeting for the executive committee is scheduled for July 24th at 11:15. We're currently slated to talk about board office budget, our semi-annual conversation on director requests, and review our engagement activities year to date as a board. And as always, we'll have our government relations report from Mr. Davies. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. And with this meeting is adjourned as of 12:24 p.m.